Hi guys, Happy New Year! I started my channel in April upon discovering that there is such a thing as BookTube, and I found myself reading a lot of fascinating books I wanted to join the community in talking about. These are the 10 that over the course of 2021 have continued to stay with me, invading my brain and my heart. The book that started it all, Sigh, a misfit's memoir of great books, punk rock, and the fight to fit in by Phuc Tran. I read this in April and was so moved by his story and the power of great books that I was activated to start this channel, and here we are. It's an incredible memoir, a fun read with puns per minute, but still achingly raw, with Tran earnestly examining his adolescence, growing up in a very Vietnamese household in a very white American suburb. It's that play between humor and pain I enjoyed so much. I laughed, I cried, I gasped, I cheered, I couldn't put it down. I recommend this to everyone as it's extremely readable and approachable, thoroughly amusing, and give you a renewed appreciation of several classic books that he uses as chapter titles, connecting a story like George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion to his own transformation from a geeky Tolkien Asian nerd in his all-white high school to a punk rocker in AP classes, growing up to become a classics teacher and a tattoo artist. 2021 is the year when I read all of Ottessa Moshfegh's books. Love them all, but I'm still heavily disturbed by Eileen, which I read in February, immediately after I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation. It was glorious, inhabiting the grimy, sweaty, repulsive world of a Moshfegh story, where you'd smell vomit and car exhaust. Dr. Tuttle is an amazing character, but I loved Eileen Dunlop, who always wore lipstick, not for vanity, but because the color of her lips is the color of her nips, and she'd feel too obscene going to work at a juvenile hall for teenage boys with a naked mouth. Everyone is absolutely detestable, and what continues to stay with me is the girly camaraderie between Eileen and Rebecca St. John, and my morally dubious sympathy for Mrs. Polk. The twist had me shook, and I mulled over the ending for weeks. This year, I also read 3 books by Melissa Broder, and Girlfriend is so good, a master of writing painful desire and extremely bad sex. I found Milk-Fed to be the tenderest, the most emotionally mature, and the only one I sobbed for. The short-lived relationship between Rachel and Miriam at the heart of the story is legit sexy and achingly romantic. When they laughed at my sort of truth, I felt the thrill of being sort of seen. But I feasted on the food and the warmth, the cozy togetherness, and I realized the food itself was only one part of what a person needed in order to be sustained. Lily King is another writer I head over heels fell in love with this year when I read Writers and Lovers in September. I think I read the first 100 pages in one sitting, and by page 46, I was absolutely devastated, my breath stolen, as if I'd been sucker punched in my soul. I immediately adored the New England writers' world in the Harvard community, where everyone knows everything about each other because writers remember and take note of every single detail. I adore and stan Casey Peabody, and really any heroine who has the balls to pursue love and passion, and by the climactic end, I was on the floor weeping for her and cheering for her every endeavor. I can't wait to read more of King's work. Kim Bo-young is my find of the year, and the 2 books of hers that have English translation, On the Origin of Species and I'm Waiting for You, are absolutely incredible and haunting and poetic and mysterious and thoughtful about human history and human existence. These are science fiction short story collections that act more as observational musings on varied topics, from the expansive forms of love to the inequities of social systems. I'm being a bit of a cheat adding these 2 books as one, but I can't help it because I literally talked about them together in my July wrap-up. I think of these 2 books as one compilation of her stories. Find her, read her, find yourself. If you think that was a cheat, I am so sorry because my next favorite book of the year is the Neapolitan series by Elena Ferrante, made up of these 4 novels that I read this spring. But to be fair, it is one story, a saga of a girl named Elena and the people who shaped her life, namely her best friend Leela and the love of her life, the F-boy of our time, Nino. Elena comes from an impoverished neighborhood in Naples, Italy, post-World War II, and uses her love of books and dedication to her education to escape from her rough hometown and pursue a life of independence and autonomy in her career. Leela is her brilliant friend who is kind of like the running buddy who's faster than you, the one who constantly challenges and intrigues her, the source of her deep underlying imposter syndrome, and her mirror of what might have been if she made other life choices. And Nino is the boy she's always been in love with from the beginning, who, when every time he shows up in her life, you gasp and feel your insides flutter, because he constantly sees her and acknowledges her capabilities. Reading the bulk of Ferrante's work this year was a standout, and the thing that most struck me is how feminist her voice is. I'm reading this novel about a woman being left by her husband and how she's suddenly burdened to take care of her children alone. You know, ordinary happenings to ordinary people, 50% divorce rate climbing even higher, etc., etc. And I feel infuriated by the patriarchy. The thing with all Ferrante stories is that they share extreme similarities, and each storyline starts to blend into each other. These are all stories of average people living average lives, and yet I feel like there's no more exciting story than theirs. This is the saga of a woman's life. But Elena, Leela, and Nino will forever remain in my brain and my heart. The Right to Sex, Feminism in the 21st Century by Amia Srinivasan is my wildcard pick. I read it in November and felt so surprised, so charged up by this truly fresh feminist theory book. Srinivasan discusses topics like how she talks to her students about porn and how mainstream feminism of the 70s era was very anti-porn, anti-sex workers, and very pro-carceralism, and how the result of that was an exclusivity of who feminism protected and who it didn't. They're wary of criminalizing sex work, not because they condone the men who buy sex, but because they know that the ones hurt most by criminalizing the sale of sex are the women who already exist at the margins of society. Should sex work be eradicated via legislation for the greater goal of no more sex work? Or should we accept current realities and adopt safer protocol? And what might that be? Every essay was intriguing. I highlighted so much in this book, and I've never had such a fun time reading an academic publication. In November, I also read The Overstory by Richard Powers, and my God, did it make me feel alive. The lyrical prose, the structure of the story, casting a species of tree for each character of this beautifully rendered cast. My favorite tree story is the whole family chestnut. My favorite character is Winston Ma. And out of 500 pages of beautifully written lines, my favorite is, "What you make from a tree should be at least as miraculous as what you cut down." This is the book that most profoundly changed me and reshaped the way I feel and think about the natural world and its future. I read Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner back in April because I wanted to be part of the cool kids talking about the cool new book, and at the time, I honestly didn't love it. Petty things like the book jacket annoyingly slipping off and noticing incorrect details like when she adds zucchini to her mrunaengmyeon kept me from enjoying it more. And I felt guilty for doing so, for being annoyed by her leaning on too many cliches and adages when she's grieving for her mother, her one source who could tell her that it should have been cucumber and not zucchini. But over the course of the year, I found myself thinking back to her story of how lost she felt after losing her mom, her only personal access into her Korean self. I thought of all the people who use DNA services like 23andMe because they want to know why they are the way they are, who don't have the privilege of knowing their family that make their genetic makeup. No mom around to say, Grandma used to get irritable with everyone, and so do I, and so do you too. Also, all three of us physically can't escape from having double chins. And I realized that telling that story, especially when Zauner is barely 30 years old, is a revelation of maturity. This is the book I most changed my mind on, and I'm really glad I came to this realization by the end of the year. And finally, Pachinko by Jin Lee is the book that I just finished reading in December that most emphatically instilled in me the importance of why I should always search for the knowledge of my roots, of where my people come from, so I know why I am the way I am, and why my grandmother is the way she is, and why everyone like me is the way they are. Like the Overstory, this is exemplary and profound fiction, transcending story and reality, and straight up hearing the voices of my ancestors calling out to me as I read about Koreans during times of oppression and persecution who worked and suffered so that by the time I was born, I could live my very easy and comfortable life. I was quite scared to read this and put it off all year because I anticipated the enormous level of heartache, but I'm very glad I finally read it and feel quite changed, more at peace and confidence in myself, and so grateful to receive this gift of living circa right now. If you've had similar feelings of being lost or separated from your own roots, however shallow or deep, I implore you to begin your own search for connection. Pachinko is a great story and a great starting point. What a reading year this has been. It's been a joy exploring BookTube and sharing my reading experiences here. If it's given any amount of value to anyone, it's been worth it. Books are magic. As always, thank you so much for watching. Happy 2022!